And if we frame it that way, I think even young people, because they've gone through it, that's where the life experiences up to that point have led them, that they can start to tap into that every mission statement, purpose, destiny, vision, calling comes from our life experiences. So if we frame it right, they can start to unpack it. So it's not just about passions. I mean, they don't know. It's about like, what is it about the world that they would love to change? They can actually answer that. So I think it's possible we can tap into that. We just have to ask the right questions, of course.
Yeah, and actually, I've worked with people in this region, they're entrepreneurs. Something. Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl Ponto. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm excited to connect with Greg Stewart. Greg lives in Rockwell, Texas, and is currently a full-time telehealth counselor, executive coach, and consultant. He has a BA in organizational leadership, a master's in divinity, an MA in counseling, and a PhD in counselor education and supervision. His dissertation was The Relationship of Emotional Intelligence to Job Satisfaction and Organizational Commitment. He wrote a trilogy on his concept of I cubed, Information Interpretation Intensity. The first is I cubed, Unlock the Inner Strength Behind Your Negative Emotions. His second, I cubed for Couples, Facing Our Negative Emotions to Build Intimacy in Marriage. And his third, I cubed for Leaders, Unleash the Rage of Negative Emotions Against the Obstacles of Becoming More. Congrats on the iCube series and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thank you so much, Karl, and it is my honor and pleasure, sir.
So I'm really excited to have you on the show because I think there's a big difference between the idea of like a leader who actually is leading people and then executives who are just basically executing and doing a job and are completing tasks, but they don't really lead. And so I think you're a perfect person to talk about what's the big difference between an executive and a true leader.
So I would say that a lot of times leadership is differentiated from management. So management, I mean, both are needed, but management is like the executive where it's just, we are here to have machines produce output and it's all based upon metrics and the like, versus leaders. It's more about the relationship, the heart. I mean, obviously the management's important, but leaders tap into the emotional side, tap into the human side of the organization and create vision and energy from that. That's what the difference is.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think what makes you the perfect person to talk about this is because you're all about helping these executives or managers become leaders by helping them figure out what their own personal mission is, what actually drives them. Because I think and we've talked about this before recording, and I've mentioned discussed with other people, is that there's a lot of people that are successful on paper, but internally they feel like there's this void, something's missing, and they're not getting the fulfillment from the job, especially if they're like a startup founder, they got to grow to rapid success, but they don't really have that sense of direction. And so what is it that they're missing and how do they find it?
So I'll talk about this way in two tracks. So the way our educational system and hiring system is that people, go to college, they pick a major, they get out of college, they join an organization and then start, working up. So it's kind of like they begin at the lower level of like supervisor, they become a manager and then a leader. And then those deeper elements of vision and purpose don't come until later. On the other side, you have entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs begin with vision and mission. They look at the world, and I like to say that, every job ever, every technological advancement ever is either trying to solve a human problem or enhance the human experience. So somebody who's an entrepreneur looks at the world and says, I want to change the world in this way. I want to solve this problem, or I want to enhance the human experience in a certain way. Like, Howard Schultz and Starbucks, right? So that's not solving a problem; it's enhancing the human experience. Matter of fact, I like to say that when I wrote this book, the majority of this book, I was actually on a cruise. Well, cruises are not solving any human problem; it's enhancing the human experience. Either way, entrepreneurs begin with that vision and mission, and then they go to leadership next because they have to influence and gather people. And then once the organization is set up, there's management. So it's actually flipped. And at some point, each person, speaking of like the human to human, each human eventually is going to want to tap into that heart thing. And I have so many leaders like late 30s, 40s come to me and they're successful. There could be directors or VPs or what have you. And I always like telling the story is I had two doctors from Houston. They came to me at the same time for counseling and they didn't know each other. One was a radiologist and one was a anesthesiologist. And they both had this burden of, like they were successful. They were making like 300K plus a year, but they basically said, is this it? And I can't tell you how many people have come to me with that burden. And that's like on the leadership side and the entrepreneurial side, that there's something deeper. Like, what are we here for? Not just to make money and do a job at an organization, but there's something deeper in all of us.
Yeah, I think there's definitely people that have gone through that, like the education, get into the workforce and work their way up the corporate ladder often are missing that drive that so many entrepreneurs have, because they came into the business world and into those executive roles from a path that didn't start with an initial understanding of who they are and why they do what they do. They just kind of, because a lot of times they made the choice what career to get into when they're like a junior in high school.
Yeah, exactly, man. Our
so
system
much.
is set up. They go to college, and we ask them. I mean, their brain's not even done developing, frankly.
Yeah.
They go to 4-year college, and they're out by 21, 22, and their brain's not even done developing. And say, hey, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? It's kind of it's flipped, and it shouldn't be that way. I mean, I don't know what's going to change it, but that's the natural outplay of it. Is it's based on skill set and personality instead of more of the heart. And that's the gap.
They're never asked to evaluate like what they actually care about, or like what they're, and or like after they get out, they no one really, they don't really feel like they have time to get to know themselves and become mindful of what they actually care about, who they really are once their brain's done developing by 25 or so. And so I think there's a lack of that kind of mindfulness, or they aren't connected with themselves. And so they struggle to connect with the work or with other people, because there's this inner kind of cognitive dissonance between the path they chose when they were a junior in high school or after they graduated college, and who they actually are now. And that usually doesn't match anymore.
Right. And I think it can be discovered. Matter of fact, I just had a session with an 18-year-old guy today, and we talk about like, follow your passions, but I think the terminology is messed up, because every time I've helped someone develop their mission statement, every single time it's always come from their life experiences. And if we frame it that way, I think even young people, because they've gone through it, that's where the life experiences up to that point have led them, that they can start to tap into that. Every mission statement, purpose, destiny, vision, calling comes from our life experiences. So if we frame it right, they can start to unpack it. So it's not just about passions. I mean, they don't know. It's about like, what is it about the world that they would love to change? They can actually answer that. So I think it's possible we can tap into that. We just have to ask the right questions, of course.
Yeah. And actually I've worked with people on this regional, they're entrepreneurs, something figuring out, because it's something that usually people on the entrepreneurial track kind of feel it, but they can't really articulate it well. They can't tell the story well.
Right.
But I know just from a human development and the kind of how the brain develops, that our core beliefs, our worldview, our mindset is fairly well set by the time we're like 8 to 10 years old, based on life experiences growing up. But most people haven't analyzed or identified the key moments, or usually it's like a key moment or key situation that really influenced that.
Yep.
And so I've used with people, I don't know if you've used like the 5 whys exercise. You kind of keep digging deep with people and get from like, when they really start digging deep into like, what's a key moment that you remember that was formative and that is kind of put them on this path to how they feel about the work and the world, and what and how they want to leave a mark on the people around them. It's something that is so profound and moving. And when people actually can articulate and understand that about themselves, it makes their path forward way clearer. And it's something I imagine you can relate to, is when they finally have that aha moment, they go from like looking at you to looking at the wall
Right.
behind you, and like you see their eyes are like they're looking way deep and have this huge aha moment. Those are some of the most profound transformations for anyone to go through, especially if they're now leading a business or they're in the leadership role at a company. I imagine that leads to some great transformations for the way they show up to work.
Yeah. So I have this Venn diagram in my book where I talk about like you have the skill set of the individual, like what am I good at? But then you have like personality, which it relates to their job culture. Like I don't want to sit behind a desk all day, or I do. And then organizational culture, but it's that third component of the mission of heart. And they don't need their brains fully developed to have a heart and a passion to see kind of like what's wrong with the world. So it's those three. So I work with a lot of parents, and I say, as like we could have 5 children in our home, but obviously all 5 kids have very different experiences that have formed them, even though they're in the same home. So I tell parents, like, step back and observe. Like, you can help them with like their skill sets and personality and stuff, but this other piece, observe what's happening in their experiences and what experiences have shaped them, because that's going to be the pathway, the journey by which they kind of are going to pick that heartbeat. And that's where each child is different, and you encourage them in such. But it certainly can happen all the way through the growing up years, like that, all three. And again, I don't think it's like super complicated to do. It's just awareness around those components, and we're well on our way to be able to achieve it.
Yeah, I think it's something that the contributes to a lack of connection between people, is that people aren't really connected with themselves. They don't really understand these core experiences, or kind of why or what they've been through that is inspiring them to see the world the way they do, or to kind of pursue what they're trying to do. They don't really have that understanding on a level that allows them to articulate it and tap into it. It's there. It's still actually, it's active all the time. But if they're not consciously aware of it and able to analyze it, then it's a lot more hit and miss whether or not it's going to really be helping them like make the right decisions.
Right.
They might get lucky once in a while, but if once they're able to tap into it and align who they are with what they're doing and the people they surround them with, and that's when you find that the work they're doing, usually they have to like change what they're doing specifically, but then like so when there's that fulfillment from the work they're doing, then it makes it better for themselves, for the company, for their teams, for their families. And I think that probably the biggest level of disconnect in society these days is with people with themselves in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So one thing is, like, I agree with you that, it's parents, a lot of times you can't impart what you don't possess. A lot of times parents don't even know like what their mission purpose is. So it's a process. But secondly is in that, I liken the mission statement unto, I call it the Iron Man core, like from the movie, that the whole point of that energy source getting placed in his chest was because there was shrapnel embedded that was going to burrow its way to his heart. Well, I liken that shrapnel unto like life's annoyances, whether it be traffic, the weather, grocery prices, doesn't matter what it is. And that shrapnel, without that Iron Man core, will kill our proverbial hearts. But once we insert that Iron Man core, that becomes this inexhaustible energy source that drives us. That's saying, I know what I'm here for. And man, you see it in people who have that. It's like, I know I'm here. And the small stuff just doesn't bother us as much because we're focused on that energy source, on that vision, mission, purpose. And it's powerful when What's powerful when people discover it. It's life-changing, of course.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great comparison, great metaphor there of having that inner power source that is, it's not implanted into your head, it's in the heart, it's in the
It's in the
chest.
heart.
It is that, and it does protect you from and allows you to withstand a lot of the kind of minor BS and challenges that at life oftentimes are, people get like go off the handle and explode over something that seems really minor, but it's because it's been building up for a while and they don't have that inner drive, that inner focus that allows them to brush it aside and stay focused on what really matters. So when you see people complain, oh, they got my coffee wrong at Starbucks, it's like, if that's, you feel like that's worth complaining about, then you're missing out on what's really important in life. And having that that inner power generator to protect your emotions and your focus from all the little annoyances that exist in the world is really powerful. And I can see how that, for a leader that are dealing with all sorts of issues on top of the kind of their personal life stuff, that is akin to a superpower for those that don't understand it.
Right. And even like for my first book, like my first book was on individual counseling. It's like, I begin with that everything we do, literally everything we do, is trying to achieve an emotional goal. We want to feel something. And I say there's micro emotional goals. Like I feel thirsty and I don't want to feel thirsty. So I take a drink. I'm tired. I sleep. But then off in our periphery are macro emotional goals. And those macro emotional goals are basically our quality of life, right? That's the banner, as defined by standard of living and living our values. There's heart, and then fulfilling destiny, calling, and purpose. So we're always like, those are the emotional goals we're trying to achieve, because we want to, we're, again, human to human, we want to make a difference. So in that journey from the first book, that if that's blocked, if those are being blocked or it's not fulfilled, then it obviously carries out with us individually to our, I have a chapter on identity, value, and worth. And then obviously with couples, same thing. Like it's we're here. What are we doing, like our family for, like marriage and family? It's about the macro goals. And then our job. So it's everything about the human experience is that we're here for a greater purpose and destiny and calling. Like that's what our purpose is. Then in the weeds, if you will, the micro emotional goals, and then we play out with like leadership actual skills to be as effective as possible. But man, that vision that transcends it all is the key.
Yeah, I like that you framed it as kind of the emotional drivers and emotional goals, because as a phrase that I love reminding people of is that as much as we like to think of ourselves as thinking beings that feel, we're very much feeling beings that occasionally think. Yeah. And so it's those goals that it's about it's not about like specifically like the revenue numbers or like the salary numbers, but it's about that bigger, how it makes us feel to have that, like the income security or like the quality of life. And there's all those emotions tied to that are what really matters. And so it's, if people aren't in touch with that emotional side of their big goals, I can see how that disconnect.
And that's where, Karl, like all my books are about negative emotion, because I mean, what do we all know? People don't leave organizations; they leave supervisors. Well, what about because the supervisors are not good. They don't have high EI. So I have my becoming more quotient on leadership. So obviously, spiritual development and destiny purpose is one quadrant, but the other two is personality as it relates to emotional intelligence. And where do we blow it? We blow it when our personality gets taken too far. There's two ways to have a weakness. Is when my strengths and my personality get taken too far. Sometimes I can become too dominant, too aggressive, too expressive, or I can become too avoidant or too critical. And that's what damages the leadership and the relationship, because if my negative emotions are involved, that is where we need emotional intelligence. I mean, that literally is what makes leaders effective or ineffective, is the emotional experience that we have within ourselves and that we have with our both our leaders, or everybody on our 360, our our leaders, our peers, and our direct reports. It is all about those emotions, especially the negative emotions.
Yeah, I can see how those are like strengths of the emotions get too extreme. That's where the big problems happen. And for especially the people in the middle, the middle managers, middle leaders, that can be even more stressful and difficult to manage. So thank you so much for connecting with me today, Greg. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection Podcast, please like, leave a review, and share it. If you'd like to connect with myself or Greg, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.